Great.
Good morning. My name is Amber Gunston. I'm the CEO of Austin Technology Council, and we're thrilled to have you all join us today for this topic and conversation. Before I hand it over to the EX Squared team to lead off the conversation, I do want to let you know that we are using Slido for our Q&A, and you can download Slido either on your phone or you can use the web version on your browser. The code for this particular program is 23043. Again, Slido code is 23043. You can load your questions in there, and the EX Squared team will go ahead and answer those questions towards the end of the program. Now I'm going to pass this over to John, and I'm going to let him lead off the conversation. John.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm John Golson. I'm the Senior UX at Rocksauce Studios, which is an EX Squared company. Joining me today to show us how design thinking can change your business are Rocksauce General Manager QMan, Rocksauce UX Director Katie Presley. And
Hello.
like she said, I can see your questions. Hello, Katie. I can see your questions come through in Slido, so feel free to ask questions at any time, and we'll make sure they're covered. We'll also set some time aside at the end of the discussion if there's anything you want to ask us or know more about. So let's begin. We'll get things started today with a definition of the term. What is design thinking?
Is that for me or is that for just us? Is that the question?
We're
For you guys.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're just conversing.
All right, cool. That's exciting. Design thinking for me basically is just a concept of solving problems by asking why and investigating what's behind the problem in the first place. There's a lot of processes that go into it that Katie's going to be much better talking about than I am. But from my perspective, as the boss guy, it's very much about saying, let's figure out why things are happening and who it's happening for, and so we can decide on what the best way to solve it is.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to really sum it up. It's really looking at what the true root of the problem is, and that's in most cases not the surface problem that people approach us with or that you approach a problem with. So in order to find that root of the problem, you really have to kind of empathize with whoever the user or the consumer is. And there's a lot of different processes that you can take for that. But as well as, really kind of diagnose the journey that user would be taking in their everyday life. And I will say user a lot because I'm work for a software company, but this can be consumer, front lines, however you want to think about it for your specific needs. I'll try to switch it out, but user is just always the first to my head. But and another part of design thinking, a big part of it is being willing to fail fast. So really kind of stretching beyond your boundaries of expectations in order to kind of come up with new and unique ideas that you can prove to be right or prove to be wrong, but you're exploring them nonetheless.
A lot of times we hear from people that go, "Oh, I'm not a designer." How is design thinking different from just design?
Well, I guess all design takes into account, or it should take into account, the audience, right? Katie mentioned user. Sometimes we use user. I try to remember to use audience because design thinking can be applied to everything. I know there's a friend of ours that John and I have that we worked with at a previous job who found a way to use design thinking to analyze yourself and to become a better person. So you can use design thinking for pretty much anything. I do find the term design thinking frustrating because it has the word design in it. And people do immediately think, oh, this is about making stuff pretty. It's called design thinking because designers have to ask, who is this for? How is it going to be used? And what's the best way to communicate the goals of what we're trying to do? And that's how designers figure out what something's going to look like, what the visuals may be. So it's bringing that sort of critical eye to whatever the problem is.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to say kind of when I think about design in general, as a general statement, it's more of focusing on what the solution should be. So how should this rectangle look? And when I think about design thinking, it's thinking about the problem rather than the solution. So it would be, what shape should we use more so?
And why should we use that shape?
And why should we use that shape? Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Well, you had mentioned earlier the importance of failing. Can you a little bit to why design facilitates failure so well?
Yeah, I think that design thinking, there's a lot of processes that have been really perfected to efficiently let failure happen, to kind of remove the fear away from, oh, if I fail, I'm going to disappoint everybody. I'm going to waste a lot of resources. Design thinking has some very kind of low profile and rapid ways of exploring failure, and therefore coming up with solutions that aren't necessarily safe and not at top of mind.
I think in regards to the general context of this conversation, which is how can design thinking help your business, no matter what the business may be, the concept of failure is really about taking a step forward, trying something out, and not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. A lot of times what businesses will do, and this happens in software, it happens in lawyer business, real estate, whatever it is that when you have a problem, you try to figure out, well, what's the perfect answer going to be before trying out that answer, because you don't want to get it wrong. And what design thinking is all about is saying, let's try something small. Let's make one step, whatever your first idea may be, whatever the consensus likes. Let's try to test it with a few people. Let's see if it works. And if it fails, hey, we haven't invested everything into it. And the reason that's beneficial is because your first test may be a failure, or it could be a partial success. Great. You learn from that. And then you go, okay, well, we got 60% of the way there, right? 6 out of 10 people liked it. What can we do to make 9 out of 10 people like it? So you try it again. You make little tweaks based on what you hear. When you do things the way that's traditionally been done, which is, well, let's try to make it perfect beforehand, you spend a whole lot of time, a whole lot of money building the perfect solution, and then you roll it out and it flops, right? And now you spend a whole bunch of money to fail anyway. Now, everything doesn't always fail, obviously, but it can happen. And so it's a way to mitigate that cost, no matter what the solution is you're trying to do.
And not only that, I just wanted to mention that you learn so much out of failure, and you stated that as well, Q, but those learnings are invaluable into what the end product is going to be. So even if you did go all out and all in on a product from the get-go with zero failure, then and it's successful, that's awesome. But it would actually, I can guarantee it would have been even better if you had some failure in that to learn from, to just make these minute changes to make it an even better product.
Yeah, and the other thing I think is that the design thinking stuff is happening. It should be happening before production, so that you're getting a lot of those, you're getting a lot of those things out of the way too, so that they're not impeding the actual product as it exists in people's hands. You're not second guessing what their expectations are going to be, then putting it in their hands and finding out that it went wrong. I think we talk about fail early being something that is beneficial before production is ever laid down. Katie,
yes.
Are there?
I was going to say, even if you've already rolled out whatever it is and you have tried that, perfect solution, version 2, version 3, the updated version of whatever it is, and it can be hardware or processes or software. Version 2 or version 3 can then deploy design thinking. So even if you've launched whatever it is, even if you already have your product or your solution out there, you can go back and add design thinking to it. You can create a secondary version that's maybe a little bit better, because everything can be better. I've never, ever used a single product in my life that couldn't be a little bit better in some ways. Even Apple products like the new MacBook Pros. Well, we all know we wish they had more than a couple of ports on the side, right? It's kind of ridiculous. That could be better had they actually thought about how do people use this each day. So everything can be made better, and design thinking can be brought in after the fact. Sorry, John, didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to get that going.
So I'll ask this question, Katie. Because I know that you're active in the trenches doing the UX production. Are there any types of projects that are best for design thinking? Are there some projects that just don't fit into the mold of design thinking?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think a lot, when I see the most value out of design thinking, kind of kicking off projects, one is when there's a lot of different kind of dissenting opinions going into a project. So this is when a lot of stakeholders have a piece of the pie. Perhaps you have a lot of different types of users you're trying to solve for. So there, you just have so many different interests, that it's easy to, I don't know, let the loudest person win, or kind of just say, oh, it's just too much, and just go into a cycle of meetings and requirement after requirement without actually like really just trying to get to the root of the problem first. So I think that that's a big win whenever we're able to kind of start with a very open workshop and ideation. And also, it's great when, you know, your brand or your business is exploring a brand new idea that hasn't been explored at all. So you know it's a good idea, but you have no past learnings that you can kind of base your knowledge off of. So this is a great way to learn fast, and to get rapid feedback and then deploy an idea from there. It was a two-parter question. So I think the bad project, maybe not design thinking friendly project. It's really hard to actually think of how design thinking could help in some way, but I would say, and I'm sure we'll get back to this question later, but if a top decision maker is not bought into the idea of design thinking or participating, even better, it's not going to work. So,
yeah, I think that for a design, a bad one is typically for me about ROI. So design thinking can be applied to a lot of different stuff, but sometimes it's a matter of, well, is this problem big enough that we want to invest the time into design thinking, right? And that's just the answer. Sometimes that's not. You don't need to actually go through design thinking process to decide, do I want to change the color of this button? You could, but you could also just as easily roll out a different button and do a quick A/B test in your own volition and find out the answers. I think that it is important that you use design thinking specifically when you're not necessarily certain that your approach is going to be right. I think that's one of the best ways that design thinking is deployed. When you go, we're having a problem and we think we know this is the problem. And we think we may have some solutions, but we have a couple of different ones we could try. Let's try to figure out what the best one's going to be. And a lot of times what you discover is when you come with the problem already served up and ready, and you start investigating what the solutions could be, you kind of unpack that the problem you thought was there isn't really the problem. The problem is actually a couple steps back, and you go, oh, wow, it's not this problem. It's this root core problem that causes this, and we're just dealing with the symptom. So what if we actually did address the problem, not the symptom? And design thinking allows that to happen because so many different ideas are in the room, and it's exciting. It helps you sort of get clarity and align everything that's going on.
Yeah, I'll take that one step further. Just back to your ROI statement, because I definitely agree with that. There's a lot of times where it's like, we don't need to go through a full process to get to the solution, especially if you have a lot of knowledge backing up, a lot of data, user testing, things like that already in place. But it's also really easy to say, I don't really want to invest that much time or our resources at the front end of this. I just want to get the product out. I just want to get the process going and moving forward. And then you end up using 5 to 10 times that amount of resources at the end. And it's a lot more expensive and a lot more time consuming because these kind of rapid low fidelity tests aren't available at that time. So when you are saying, oh, there's probably not the ROI to really get that, to invest in that right now, just make sure you're thinking about the future as well, and what that would look like.
Do you think that some of those philosophies are part of the reason why it's become so popular and it works so well? I mean, when you're going through the processes, and I know we're going to talk about some of the processes. When you're going through the processes, Katie, you talked about it bringing like equal voice to everyone, but there's also specific exercises that I think force people to think certain ways. And often, when we've conducted them ourselves, I think one of the things is you can't know how you would have gotten where you got without having gone through all the steps of everything. So even though the steps of everything may seem like, well, what exactly are we doing right now when we're trying to break this down into like little small activities, and then seeing, the results at the end of the day and going, well, we may not have ever reached these results had we not done all those activities. Why do you think that this is such a popular method right now?
Yeah, I would say that right now, the way that our world is set up and the markets are set up, everything is very saturated and competitive in nature. And if you're not really focusing on the root of a problem or a gap in somebody's life,
Hi, everybody. This is Amber Gunst. I think we're having a little bit of technical difficulties with Q and Katie. We're working on getting them back together. But John, some really interesting questions that you guys have popped into. And I think where Katie was going on the aspect of, trying to, that competitive nature that's going on. I'm kind of curious because, it's great when you can sit together as a team and you can do this creative thought process. How is this changed right now with EX Squared now that everybody's sitting in their own homes away from each other?
That's a good question. So, and we actually had a question that kind of overlaps with that. We had somebody ask in the room, are there any tools or resources to help jumpstart people? So one of the things that we discovered to do it remotely, and we've actually used it in the room as well, and we have no association with the company or anything like that, but Miro, Miro.com, is a digital collaborative whiteboard that allows people to log in and everybody participate on a whiteboard all at once. And with all the tools you would expect from whiteboarding, you can draw, you can bring photos into Miro and things like that. So a lot of times when we begin, we prefer to have a design thinking workshop in person, all face-to-face at the table, all of our Post-its and notebooks and all of our highlighters and everything there ready to go, because you end up like writing ideas down on Post-its and putting it up on the wall and then voting for those with little number stickers and all kinds of activities that help unify a bunch of dissenting opinions and a bunch of dissenting ideas. Miro just lets us do that digitally. Even the voting, Miro also has the voting. So you can actually create digital Post-its, write your idea, put a digital vote on it when voting time comes. There's timers in it and things like that for activities. So we found Miro to be invaluable for remote workshopping, and we were actually using it before we were all sort of under lockdown and all sort of having to face different working conditions. We were using it there, and the reason we started using it before work from home was the thing was specifically because we wanted a living record of it, and it was easier to keep with a Miro board that had all of that living record than it was for somebody to put 150 posts in their desk that have a bunch of notes scribbled down on them.
I think that's brilliant because I lose my Post-its after about 5 minutes.
Miro has been invaluable, and it's very, very easy to use. Not all of us, even though we're a tech company, not all of us are tech heads. A lot of us are artists, and it's been very, very simple for anybody to use. So,
well, good. So now, when you're looking at that collaborative problem solving, and again, so much easier to do when you're all in the same room, and we're even seeing that with our own team. It's like I have to jump on a call here, or we're on a Google Hangout there. What are some of the ways that you're working around it outside of Miro that is working with that collaborative problem solving and trying to do it in a thoughtful, creative way that has everybody heard? Because like you said, you've got some engineers, you've got some artists, they don't always speak in the same language. and in the same type of communication style. What are some of the tricks that you all are using right now?
Well, one of the things design thinking are some there's some anonymous brainstorming, and that's I talked about the voting part. That's where voting comes in because we're a small company, so I think we all know each other's handwriting at this point. But the concept is supposed to be that you're presenting the ideas as a batch, and everyone is voting for the stuff that resonates with them. It's not necessarily, and the voting is anonymous as well. So it's not necessarily a matter of the boss gets the say. Everyone that has a hand in the product, they talk about bringing in you bring in people that are effective. The best way to assemble a group of collaborators for a design thinking workshop are to take the key stakeholders who, not just the project manager, not just whoever the manager is. You want to bring in people who are affected by the thing that you're trying to create. So we've had these workshops with an SEO guy in there, as well as other people who you might not immediately think that their opinion is valuable to the design of the product, and ultimately it is. And so we want to make sure that all the people that are touched by that or have to deal with the product on a regular basis are in the room, and then they're all their opinions on the level playing field. Mm-hmm. Hey.
Oh, Katie, are you back? Oh, I think she popped out again.
The other thing we do,
technology.
Sorry about that. The other thing we do is we have we've discovered the value of the parking lot. And the parking lot is, in early workshops when we were still trying to figure out the best way for us as a company to do design thinking, because we didn't want to just cookie cutter somebody else's formula. We wanted to make sure that we were adapting it to what our needs are and what our discoveries were. So we were basically prototyping these concepts ourselves. And the concept of the parking lot, which is if someone has an idea, it's either a tangent, someone has an idea where you have someone in the meeting and they're talking about something, expressing something that they bottled up, so they're going on and on. Really, they're only supposed to talk for 5 minutes, but now you're looking at your watch, it's 42 minutes and they're still going about the thing. The parking lot is really great in letting somebody know that their idea has been heard because you're documenting it, you're writing it down. So the other thing, facilitating a group like that with a bunch of different dissenting voices, is making sure that opinion that may require further discussion, may require a look towards the future, may not even be relevant, but you want to ensure the person, we're glad you brought this up, this has definitely been heard, this is documented. You're taking that and you're basically setting it aside, but writing it down for everyone to see that this discussion is important. You're placing it to the side. Now, there's been times where that parking lot has opened up ideas for other products or other workshops. There's been times where they've ignored altogether, or there's been times where we've parking lotted something, continued to talk through the workshop, and then actually come back around to it because suddenly it's become more relevant than it was before. So those are some of the ways that we've taken dissenting voices and making sure that everyone feels equal in the design thinking process, even if they're not equal in their roles at work.
Am I a dissenting voice right now?
Are you a dissenting voice? I don't think so.
Am I a voice in general?
I can hear you.
Great. Thanks for going through that, John. Sorry,
that's no problem. We had some questions about tools you could use, and I brought up the advantages of Miro, and then some questions about how to do this with teams that may not all be on the same page, much less in the same location. So,
yeah. Should I expand upon? I'm not sure everything you covered. So,
no, I mean, I talked about it while you guys are off, but one of the questions actually to the room was about those tools and resources. So they wanted to know specifically, like, what are we using? I brought up that we had implemented Miro a long time ago because we wanted a written record of our meetings as opposed to just a bunch of Post-its, and that it was great because then when we're required to work from home, we were already using Miro as a digital whiteboard. So I talked to Miro a little bit, but I didn't go into some of the other tools that might be used.
Cool. Yeah. Miro is amazing. And I know that's what we use internally. There's a couple of other platforms that do the same thing, and I can't speak to how they compare. But I know Mural is another one, that does kind of the same thing. And Google also has a whiteboarding app as part of their suite that we haven't really used. But, we also use Figma as our design tool, and that's something else that we transitioned to a few months before we went remote. And man, am I glad we transitioned to that then, or we would be really kind of chasing our tails with the platform we used in the past. It got a little glitchy when it came to collaborating remotely. So Figma is also a great tool where everyone can hop in on the same canvas and ideate together remotely.
Jumping back into our discussion topics, let's talk about, Q kind of brought it up earlier. Is he back on the call yet? Or is it just you?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yeah.
Okay, you can hear me, yeah. Video's not working. At least not yet. So I'm here.
Okay. You'd mentioned existing products and that the design thinking could be applied towards things that had already been rolled out, whether that was software, whether that was a physical product. How does design thinking help those existing projects?
I think if it's an existing project, as Katie mentioned, you may have spent a lot of time and effort getting there at the beginning, but being able to listen to the user now and seeing what they actually thought about the product gives you the opportunity to go back and test out those hypotheses. So if a lot of users are complaining about certain things or sales are a certain way, whatever the feedback you're getting from your actual audience, at that point, now you can say, well, people seem to want this. Let's try it out. Let's do a quick prototype now to see if that would change what people thought about this project. And you can actually tap into that audience that provided that for you, provided you that feedback, and see if they're willing to come in and be test users, which is great as well.
Mm-hmm. I talked a little bit while the call was dropped. I talked a little bit about the stakeholders. So I want to get your opinions on the stakeholders. Who should be in these meetings? Is it important to have the big boss in the meetings, and what kind of roles need to be in design thinking meetings?
Yeah, so it is important that there is a form of a decision maker as a part of the process. So not you can't always get the big boss for a whole kind of design sprint or anything like that, but having their blessing and having them come in for key decision-making moments, or having them assign a specific person that they trust as a stakeholder to hold that decision-making key is important, because, you know, in the end, we're trying to get things pushed through production. And if we do all of these exercises and they never make it past, you know, the drawing board, then the whole effort is going to seem like a failure to everyone that was involved. So no matter how much excitement we garner, no matter how many good ideas we get, if it doesn't get past, you know, that first step, then it's going to, you know, it's a flop at that point. So I think a decision maker is key. And again, not necessarily for the whole thing. And they're also allowed to kind of give their decision-making knighting over to somebody else. But
yeah,
I think
you just need somebody to break ties. Like we've seen that come up too. Yeah,
for sure. Where it's like, yeah, we're split even. Who's going to be the tiebreaker here for sure? I think another important participant is either a user or a consumer, or an ambassador for the user or the consumer. So if it's an internal workshop, having somebody who's in customer service, who's at the front lines and having those discussions every day is really important, to have them come to the table with all of that knowledge, because that's super important to lead the conversation. And then the third type of stakeholder I will mention is a subject matter expert. So there's a lot of, big ideas and general flows that can be knocked out. But if you don't have the logic behind that, it's going to be really difficult it will be easy to get blocked in that ideation because you don't have the logic that fuels that conversation.
Mm-hmm. I mentioned tools. We talked a little bit about tools. Let's talk a little bit more. Let's scratch the surface more on the specifics of how to facilitate design thinking remotely. I kind of just mentioned software. I didn't really get into process as much. So if we could talk a little bit about the design thinking remotely.
Yeah, I'll hop right into that. I feel like I just talked a lot, though. I don't know if Q wants first dibs on this.
No, you can go ahead. Feel free.
Okay. I think design thinking remotely is I'm actually really excited to get to explore these methods during this break that we're having. And actually, I was just reminded by our marketing person that we have a recent blog post coming out that we focus on remote working from home and how that's changed our design thinking process and things like that. So you can find that, I believe, on the Rocksauce website. But
I think Monday, that goes live Monday.
Yeah. So it's been exciting to kind of really utilize these tools and design think how to be remote and collaborative at the same time. Some things that I would bring up outside of Miro, Figma, of course, any video chat where we can see each other's faces, because that's very important. I think there's a lot of warm up that can happen before design thinking workshops as well. So by that, I mean, you can send out kind of some hands-on packages to make people feel like they are in the same space and a bit more collaborative. This can include some healthy snacks, some sensory or fidget tools. So a lot of times we'll do silly putty, things like that really help people kind of stay engaged with the conversation. As silly as it might feel whenever you're passing it out at the beginning of the meeting, it always gets used. As well as, sketching tools. So the best types of sketching pens and paper, and just really having people have that hands-on feel. And the last thing I'd suggest for that hands-on package would be a participant pamphlet that people could kind of review beforehand to really get a good feel of who's in the room. On that note, it's also really important to pre-onboard participants to the tools. So you're not spending that whole time kind of with frustrated participants not able to really engage. And so a great thing to do is kind of a pre-workshop icebreaker session where you have everyone log in and get on the tools and create kind of some game activities that are low pressure, that really interact with the tools, and have everybody collaborating and working together. Not only does this help with onboarding, but it also helps people get to know each other and able to be a little bit more candid with each other when we do get to the actual workshop.
Yeah, I think that's really important, is to make sure that you take the time to get people communicating, to get them talking before you start the exercises of the workshop itself. Because what you'll discover in a traditional workshop is without those sort of icebreakers or improvisational exercises to get people's brains working, it can take a couple of hours for them to warm up, A, to each other, but B, to just the concepts at all, like ideation at all. And so finding interesting games, improvisational exercises like an improv troupe would do, things that get you bouncing ideas back and forth and accepting ideas from each other and then pushing ideas back, gets those muscles already working. And so that way you come warmed up, literally. I mean, your brain's already firing in the right orders, the right places, versus it being cold and going, I don't know what's happening. And it takes some of the pressure out of somebody being more of a boss or somebody being a little bit higher on the corporate ladder, because if they're all participating in it, then it brings them down to a human level. And that is one of the benefits, interestingly enough, about remote doing this instead of in person, because people don't seem to be quite as differential towards the bosses when everybody's on a screen because they're all treated equal and they're not actually a physical presence in the room. So they end up being just a little more willing to push back against the boss. And I mean, I'm a boss, and I'll tell you what, there's no boss out there that shouldn't be pushed back against. Just because you are the boss does not mean that you have the best ideas. And so it is really about finding the best ways forward on the product. And remote facilitation does help out a lot with that.
Yeah. And one of the things, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the things I know we've experienced is that the multi-day design workshops are always better than the one-day design workshops. And the biggest part of the reason why that is because a one-day, people typically don't start opening up and feel comfortable to share ideas until literally 2 hours before the workshop comes to an end on the first day.
Yeah.
And part of that is that a lot of times when people are sitting down with us to do a design thinking workshop, they're looking at us as the experts. And so they're hesitant. They want to learn from us. They want to hear what we have to say. Well, really, we're there to learn from them and hear what they have to say towards helping them make a better product. And I find that halfway through the day, a lot of times people then start to really get into the free-flowing sharing of ideas. So if you have the flexibility to do a design thinking workshop that lasts across multiple sessions, you'll find the secondary sessions a lot of times way more productive because people now have a rapport, they understand what they're there for, and they're more willing to share and discuss and that sort of thing than they are, just sitting down in the room cold.
And one of the interesting things is that, so if we take this out of the remote context, because again, right now we are remote and we understand that, but that's not going to stay that way forever. So say we go back, once we get back to people being able to move around and you're going to have a workshop, whether it's internal or you're bringing somebody in to help you out. Even if it's a one day, but if it's a multiple day, this is a good idea as well, is the day before that evening, once people are coming into town or getting ready, have a mixer. Have some sort of dinner, have some sort of event where they can get to know each other and have those conversations. So that way, the morning of the workshop isn't the first time some of these disparate voices meet each other because they're going to be sizing each other up and they're not going to be certain what they can say to the other person or how that person is going to react to them. If they have a couple of hours that's completely pressure-free because they're eating and they're drinking and they're having a good time, that will help them get a little more familiar with each other. It breaks down some of those walls. And that is really, really helpful in getting these things moving forward.
Yeah, I think being creative is a part of everyone. Even if you don't know that you have creativity, you really do. And we have, there are exercises that are able to pull that out. But for it to be able to be pulled out, you really need to be comfortable. And so all of these are ways of making you comfortable. In the remote scenario, that's kind of the idea behind, yes, let's get onboarded to our tools so we're comfortable using them. And at the same time, let's make a fun, low-key, no-pressure game out of it to where everyone can communicate. You're maybe drawing weird animals. There's all kinds of different games you can play to really kind of let people relate to each other as humans rather than coworkers or client to contractor.
I think that, and this was brought up a little bit earlier, kind of. So there was the question about, well, what type of projects are great for design thinking? What kind of projects aren't good? And that the type of project is important, but to me, that's what's even more important is what are the right environments for design thinking versus not design thinking. And I can tell you that just from firsthand experience, if you're a company or you're an organization that's looking for solutions and you want whomever is going to build it to be the experts and not to ask you questions and not to rely on you for information and not to try to pull data from you and have you participate in the solution. If you want someone to just come in and deliver something to you, design thinking is not going to work for you. You will be very frustrated because our job
in the background.
Yeah, because our job in design thinking is to talk to you. It's to find out what you know. It's to find out what ways have you tried to solve the problem, what ways have failed, what ways have worked, what are the real core issues, who is the audience, talk to your audience, all that stuff. If you're expecting us to do all that stuff beforehand and then come in and go, all right, this is exactly what you should be doing, that's more of the traditional design concept. And it can be done. We've spent many years doing that stuff. And some projects, that may be the best bet. But it does very much matter that you come with an open mind. You come ready to discover that your ideas aren't the right ideas, that the problem you wanted to solve isn't the right problem, and that you don't know everything, but that your designers don't know everything as well. Your design team that's working and facilitating this are going to be experts in human nature and HCI, human computer interaction, psychology, things like that. But we're not going to be experts necessarily in your field, right? So we're relying on you to tell us what problems do your users have on a regular basis. And we're not going to be experts on what you've tried before or how your organization actually works, because we may come up with just a solution on our own. And if we did that, we may come to you and bring it to you, and you say, we can't do that because our IT department doesn't allow that type of connection. Well, that would have been a huge waste of our time and your money to try to do it that way. So we want to work together. And so if you're ready to be collaborative and you want to come up with the best possible solutions, design thinking's for you.
Yeah, I'd also mention on top of that with if you're just trying to run something internally, just to lock in a process. Again, this doesn't have to be product oriented. It's really important to make sure that everyone's aligned when they come out of that room. I think that even more so than the solution that comes out of the room, whatever, we're moving forward with as our plan of attack. I think that might change after, the next day or the next week when we go through testing, things like that. But what's not going to change is that alignment that comes out of you coming up with it together and having everyone's opinions heard on the matter. Because then everyone's going to advocate for this process and for moving forward because they know that they have a foot in the game.
Yeah, earlier it was mentioned, the stakeholders and the kind of people to have in the room. And obviously you want decision makers, you want bosses if possible to be in the room, but you want those people because you need them to be champions, because whether they're the CEO or they're just in, a higher level individual, they have to be the person that's going to put on the armor, put on the shield, and go out there to everybody who was not in the exercise. And so they have not been, they don't have all that indoctrination of why you're making the solution you're making, because what you're coming up with may seem pretty radical to those who have more traditional plans. And you want that, frankly. You don't want a solution that you could have come up with like that on your own. That's not really the benefit of design thinking. So it's probably going to be a little bit outside the norm, and it's going to be an interesting way to approach it. And having that person who's a champion, who has enough clout to go out there and say, nope, I was in the meeting, I heard what was there, trust me, this is the right way to go forward, is important. But as part of that, if you are that person, you have to make sure you do agree with what happens in that meeting. You can't sabotage the design thinking exercise, or you've wasted the time, effort, and money. You have to have your say in that meeting. If you're not happy, if you don't think it's the right direction, if you have problems with it, do it with the group in general, because nothing will sabotage a design thinking project worse than everybody's in the room, everyone's agreeing, everybody leaves thinking they're all aligned, and then the person that's in charge was thinking, I don't really like that. I really just want my solution. And so they start second guessing and changing things. A, that'll make the solution completely different and maybe worse. But B, it's also going to erode trust with your team. Because now your team's going to go, well, I can't trust my boss, because every time we talk about stuff, we think we have an agreement. He goes off or she goes off and does their own thing. And that makes it really difficult. So again, use that room to have your say. And be convinced, like a jury, right? If you have jury duty, you have to go, you have to all talk about it and come out with a solution and push that solution forward, test it. If it fails, it fails. If it's great, it's great. The benefit about design thinking is that you're doing a small bit. If you're doing a design sprint in particular, it's a week, taking a week and coming up with something. So you're not investing 18 months into a product that's going to fail. You're investing a week of time.
Yeah. I want to just hit on something you said at the beginning of that, which was kind of the person to wear the armor, go out and tell everyone like, hey, this is what we're doing. And that it came about in a really great way. That might not always take the form of a leader. It might be, or of a boss, I should say. It might be in a lot of companies, if you're thinking about your company, you can probably pinpoint somebody who's kind of a cultural leader in your organization. So somebody who really just is like, gets the team behind them, definitely has, knows everybody's birthdays, whatever it may be. But having that type of a participant is also a great way to get the whole team on board after the meeting, because you obviously, in a larger organization, you can't have everybody in there or nothing would get done. So that cheerleader could also come in that form as well.
Specifically, what, I want to know from both of you, from your own experience, and I'll field it to Q first, specifically what types of problems you've seen solved by design thinking.
So a lot of what we've done historically has been software. So it's tough to not link up software stuff. But we've done and applied design thinking to so many other things, and it's really interesting and fun. So Katie's mentioned processes before. That's one of the areas. We had a large client who came in and wanted us to focus on the innovation as a concept, as an idea. And there wasn't necessarily a specific product that they wanted us to build. There could have been a software, but it was much more about a set and series of processes that helped promote innovation within this large organization. Sometimes it's just a matter of improving perception. So we did a poster campaign for another large client that focused on the future and the ideas of the future. And that poster campaign then led into an actual action figure that we built. And we went through that whole process because that would sit on people's desks and look good. But we've also done big, huge things like safety, right? Like, what do you do with all the safety data that a company has been tracking for the last 20 years and putting into a large database, but nobody goes back to look at it? Well, how do you get that and actually action upon it and use that to come up with better paths forward and maybe predict things in the future? So it can be pretty much anything from our perspective.
Yeah, I'll build on that a little bit and think the first thing that kind of comes to my mind is a large organization that we were working with. They were a construction company, and a lot of the ideas that have built the company up from its very beginnings were, top-down ideas, top-down processes, and really focused on that bottom line. So focused on how the business report is going to look at the end of the day. And we were asked to come in and really kind of reevaluate the day-to-day processes for those working on the field, getting their boots dirty, and really kind of flipping that organization on its head and saying, like, we're foreman first is kind of what we went with, is foreman first. And that really changed their organization, for the long run. And I think that was a really cool thing. It was really cool to have, not only, we got to go visit the field and follow the workers around in their day-to-day job, but we were also able to bring them into some really cool big meetings, in the offices, and so like it was a great relationship, and I think that was really successful.
Yeah, I think Q mentioned earlier talking about sometimes people don't want to get involved with the process, so they're sort of like, you guys do it, you're the experts, you do it. And I think that one of the things is that we still apply the design thinking principles, and we'll workshop it ourselves. So even if we don't have the stakeholders, we've come to a place where we value the process so much ourselves that that's fine. If that's the charge from a client, that's fine. We'll do it. But it's sort of like, well, we're gonna still do the design thinking, even if the stakeholder's not necessarily in the room. It's become valuable enough to us, for that to be part of our regular workflow, whether or not it's something that is being asked for, as part of the need, like, we want this. I find that sort of being, for me, like, that's all the proof I need, is the fact that it doesn't matter whether somebody is formally requesting a design thinking workshop. We're still gonna do it if we're doing their project.
Yeah. So. And I would say you could take that internally as well. We've mentioned kind of the types of people you want in the room. But you could also become those people. So you could take on that. if we need a subject matter expert and that subject matter expert's not available, then somebody's going to go out and do a lot of research and do a lot of learning and become a subject matter expert for that purpose. Somebody's going to go and really study those personas with primary and secondary research and become that user expert and user advocate in the meeting. So yes, if somebody's coming in as a client relationship, that's something that can happen. So, the way that we speak as an agency, but also internally, if you don't have access to all these people, you can take on those personas in your own way.
Katie, can you speak a little bit? Now, this is our bread and butter here because this gets into user experience and UX stuff. Can you talk a little bit about prototyping and the necessity of prototyping in the design thinking process?
Sure. So I'll start with what prototyping is really kind of creating the feeling of something real, whether it is a product or a process or, an item, really trying to rapidly create the feeling that this is a real thing and get feedback from it. That's what it's about. So this can come in a lot of different forms. It's not necessarily, it could be pieces of paper with sketches on them that somebody's kind of puppeteering around to make interact the way they need to. It could be creating kind of a storyboard that walks somebody through a service design process. There's a lot of different ways that a prototype can actualize itself. So it's not necessarily here's wireframes and now it's a tappable prototype, which is the most common scenario, I guess. But I want to say that that's not really a necessity of design thinking. I want to say that what the heart of design thinking comes from the way you approach the problem, and how you then move forward with it is up to you. It's very helpful to have a prototype that can be rapidly tested, and as goes back to a lot of what we've been talking about with like the low risk way of getting feedback. But really, if you're approaching something problem first and user centric, that's the heart of design thinking.
Q, do you have anything to add on that subject?
I mean, Katie, because she's a genius, pretty much said it the right way. Prototypes are valuable just because they give hands-on experience for some individuals, and there are some problems or some customers or some users who aren't able to articulate what they feel about something without it in front of them, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes that does require higher fidelity, more detailed prototyping. So, some of the stuff we do for prototyping can be as simple as, taking the idea of a mobile app or a website flow or even just a corporate process and putting on sticky notes on a wall or on Miro. And for some customers or users, that works great. But then you'll have some where they go, this is so abstracted from what the final result will be, it doesn't work for me. And so you have to get closer and closer to an actual product to put in front of them. Now, one of the benefits is that it does depend on where you're at in the flow, on whether or not prototyping is a necessity, in my opinion. So if you're just trying to figure out the problem or a general solution, prototyping may not be necessary. But once you start to get into the nitty gritty of, okay, and this is what we want to do, this is the problem we want to solve, and is it going to convert, or are users going to love our verbiage, things like that, then you get a little closer to the need of a prototype, because you're then really testing out final look and feel, or you're really testing out what the final user flow or an audience flow will be through a product or whatever it is. And so you get tighter results as far as being more certain of the answers with a more high fidelity prototype. But early on, you don't even necessarily need to do that. You're actually wasting time, as Katie mentioned. If you are just trying to figure out, is it problem A or problem B, you don't need to create full prototypes to find that out. You just need to talk to the users and find out the audience and do the design thinking or work through to go, okay, now we understand which problem we should be focusing on. And now we can look at the solution we want to do.
Yeah, I'll speak to, just really quick, I'll speak to kind of what you were going at, but kind of the kind of ultimate prototype, I guess. The highest fidelity prototype is the proof of concept. So this is a developed prototype that has, code behind it and is live. And it's something that sometimes you need that. We are working on a project right now that requires some voice skill interactions with Alexa. It requires interactions of two different users that have to be communicating with each other. And we've decided to go the proof of concept way with that, where we're saying, hey, we're going to rapidly actually develop, do this in a very agile fashion and get results fast from that. So there is need for that at times too.
I know in the process as well, we've done it where, because not everybody has the same skill set, if there's a step in the design thinking workshop where an idea needs to be illustrated as a flow, basically a 1, 2, 3, people have the freedom to do that as text versus as actual drawing or as a mock-up. So if they want to go, first the user logs in, then they see this screen, then this thing happens. There's some cases where people, they write it down or they stick figure it, or some people actually can draw it out. But, again, it goes back to presenting ideas in a visual way. Even your text written on a piece of paper stuck up on the wall for everyone to see, if it's just handwritten text, is still a visual that lets somebody look at that and go, okay, I can see step 1, step 2, step 3. And again, design thinking, not only does it facilitate a wide variety of projects, it facilitates conveying those like super low fidelity prototyping of ideas in a way that still allows them to be visual and for the group to absorb them.
Totally.
Great.
I know we're probably wrapping up pretty soon. I don't know if there's any additional questions. You can ask them on Slido, sli.do, and the room number is 23043. I don't see any other additional questions right now. But I do want to let Katie and Q have the final word.
Yeah. If there's time right now, I mean, I think a big kind of takeaway is always try to be identifying what gaps exist and how you can solve for those gaps. So be thinking of it as any solutions that you're looking for as a missing puzzle piece that are very specific to that shape and form. And the best way to go about finding that solution is by through design thinking, in my opinion.
And I would just add to that, none of us are as right as we think we are. So that's one of the big benefits of design thinking, is that even though we may think we have the right solution, once you start design thinking through a process or a problem, you kind of discover, okay, maybe I wasn't as right as I thought I was. And that's a good benefit because it's good for your users and your audience.
Yep.
Well, great. Well, thank you all so much, John and Katie and Q. I know for myself, even though I don't do anything from a design aspect, just some of the aspects that you were talking about are things that can really be applied across an entire organization. So this was a very beneficial conversation. We will be hosting this, or we will be posting this online as well, so that if you have some more questions or if you're thinking about it or there's something that you want to go back to, you'll receive a link for the video. It will also be posted on the ATC website. We will also be keeping Slido open for another 45 minutes, just in case you do have questions after this fact that you want us to get over to the team at EX Squared and Rocksauce to be able to get answered for you. We look forward to seeing you all very soon, hopefully sooner rather than later. But in the meantime, please make sure you're taking care of yourselves, you're keeping home, and you're keeping safe as much as possible. Please wear your masks in public, as Dr. Escott from the health department is stating that is the most important thing to do, next to washing your hands a lot. We are so excited to have worked with EX Squared and Rocksauce on this program today. We are grateful to Starleaf for being able to share this platform with us to be able to do this, and want to thank my team who worked behind the scenes today when we had a little bit of a difficulty and got Q and Katie back online. And it has been a pleasure to work with everybody on this, and you all take care. And please let us know. And if you do want to reach out to the team at Rocksauce, you can email our team at info@austontechnologycouncil.org. Again, that is info@austontechnologycouncil.org, and we can get you in touch with the team. I hope you all have a great day and try to get out and enjoy a little bit of the sunshine.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Adios.